All right. Welcome back to the Gregory and Paul show. I'm Gregory.
I'm Paul. Hey everyone.
Paul's in it. Yeah, and you're in an Uber right now,
Can you tell my
huh?
head bobbing up and down?
Up and
Here,
down.
let me take off my background.
Okay,
There we go.
okay. Oh, there you go.
A sunroofed Tesla with red seats.
I love it. All
It's
right.
perfect.
So, Gregory and Paul show. We break down the latest in SaaS, startups, AI, whatever the internet is debating this week. And boy, was there a big debate over the last few days. That's what we asked our good Twitter friend, Adam, to come and join us. Hi, Adam.
Hey, Gregory. Hey, Paul. How's it going, guys?
You want to introduce yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Gregory's favorite reply guy. I'm addicted to X. And in my spare time, when I'm not tweeting and shitposting all day, I am in tech. I'm an investor. I'm an advisor. And I'm also an entrepreneur. I own a business with my wife and all around doer of things.
Oh my God. It's such a great story. So yeah, you and I have been like back and forth on X for years, right?
Years.
And then we finally met in person when I visited Paul in Toronto, where you're at.
That's right. And Paul, where did you take us to dinner? Because I remember we had a great dinner, but the name of the restaurant escapes me.
You know what's funny? I forgot the restaurant as well. I'll dig it up and I'll show you.
Well, yeah.
Oh my
That was
God.
October. Can you believe that we're now halfway through December and that was October? That was early October.
Oh my God. Yeah, time is
Super fast.
time's flying. Well, we gotta jump in. I think this is the right way to kick off the Smellgate discussion. I don't know. Like I for people that are like not on X or not paying attention, you probably have no idea what's going on. Even I had to like do a lot of reading to get up to speed. And so let me see if I could summarize it and then try to tie it into this tweet here. But there was a startup. Once upon a time, there was a startup, and the CTO went to a hackathon. Did he go to the hackathon? I don't even know if he went. And then he made he didn't go, right? He just commented on a photograph of a hackathon with "it smells" in there, which from my perspective is a popular post and joke I've seen all over X, all over the internet, particularly related to hackathons and tech events. And somehow I guess this became a big issue, and there was a lot of controversy over this. So much, in fact, that the person who posted it, I believe, was let go from their job. The CEO weighed in on it and was supportive and wasn't supportive, and it's gone back and forth. It's created all this drama, and then of course, like our PR guru here, Lulu Chang Mercery, says like, "Hey, comms mistake. Everyone makes them. Sometimes things fall flat. It happens to me. It happens to other people much smarter. But betraying people or principles is in a different category. It's preventable and less excusable. Cowardice doesn't happen by accident." In the case of Smellgate, it could be argued that Pash made the first kind of mistake, overlooking how his joke could be misinterpreted. But then the CEO inarguably made the second kind of mistake, and that one to me is much, much worse. Adam, I saw you were like posting about this. Like, what is your perspective on here? First of all, do you even agree with Lulu and what she's said about this?
Oh, listen, when it comes to PR, like I might as well have a tattoo on my wrist that says, what would Lulu do? Right. I mean, I don't think it's controversial for people to think that Lulu's the GOAT. She just recently raised a fund. I have very, very high confidence in the companies that she ends up seeding because listen, it's Lulu, right? She knows how to communicate and what resonates. So with her take, I agree. And I waded into the controversy a little bit because I'm of Indian descent. I was born in Canada, and I've been on the receiving end of racism for being an Indian person or Indian descent. I don't know. I'm inclined to shrug and move on, right? I mean, I've been accused of being smelly myself, and I've been around folks that have had less than a pleasant body odor. And the thing that I find really interesting is that it comes down to people assigning worth or moral value to these observations, right? When what we're talking about is a lot of the time diet and habits. You eat food that has a certain aromatic profile, your body extrudes that scent. That's just going to be the way it is. Now, if you are in a place where everybody is eating that type of food and, sharing the same habits, well, that's the norm. But when you move into an environment where it's a different environment and people observe it, the observation in of itself, I don't classify that as racism. Now, if you go down the road and do the rest of it, potentially. But as far as this tweet was concerned, the quote unquote original sin, I mean, the guy made a joke, and ostensibly you could say that he was just talking about hackathons. I've been to many. They are smelly, they are multiracial, and they are smelly. And I like to think that, hey, assume positive intent. If you assume positive intent, then life is much easier. So that was the first half of it. The second half of it was about the way the CEO reacted. If all of them had kept their mouths shut, just tune out, log out of Twitter, wait a couple days. By the time they come back online, everybody's moved on to the next thing. And that was the point that I wanted to land. Unfortunately, the point that seemed to land with much of Indian Twitter was that either I was a self-hating Indian or not Indian at all, and that I was just looking to kiss white people's ass. And that's not what I was going for, folks. The point I was making was that if you find yourself in trouble online, shut up. That's it.
Yeah, lots of lot of good points made there. In fact, like the first point I want to make about hackathons, because I've gone to many hackathons and I still go to hackathons, was Nikita weighed in from Twitter, head of product at Twitter, and he said, the irony is that we had to bring industrial air blowers into the office after a hackathon because of the smell. And to be abundantly clear, people of all ethnic backgrounds reeked. I mean, I have to be honest, like that has been my experience too. Like many hackathons I've attended to over the past 20 years. I've done a lot of these things. They're really intense. People stay all night, eat lots of candy. My wife walks in this room half the time and is like not happy with like how it smells, to be honest.
Listen, last night my wife asked me, "Hey, did you shower this morning?" I'm like, "Yes, I showered this morning." What's going on, babe? Come on.
Well, here's a more serious question. So I think we're all on the side of like it was a joke. It's a common joke. We're all aware of that. Why do you think it was misinterpreted, or what happened? Like, is people really misinterpret it? Is it disingenuous? Like, I'm curious, like what your thoughts are on that.
No, I'm empathetic and I'm sympathetic. There's a lot of anti-Indian bias online right now, and especially on X. Right, there's a large echo chamber. A lot of people that have a hard time separating, legitimate grievance with what are, a group of people, and hateful messages, and people being what they are. It's easy to react emotionally. It's easy to make mistakes with the law of large numbers, and a lot of stuff gets lost in the wash. Even if I'm looking at the post I made, and most of the comments, if not all of them, they actually miss the thing that I was saying, and they focus on the thing that they heard, which is a lesson in communication for myself as the producer, in terms of understanding what it is the consumer sees. Because even in this context where I am talking directly with you guys, who I know well, what originates in my head makes its way out of my mouth and then into your ears and then processed. There's a large gulf in between those things.
Yeah. And interesting. Interesting point. I agree too that like, hey, if it was misinterpreted, just let it all blow over. Like like I said, it's a finally minor thing. I'm sure there's a lot of people like, listening to this and like they're just clueless to what we're even talking about. Right? If you're not on X a lot, it's probably even hard to understand the context of all this. So I agree 100% that like if it went south like that, just kind of like write it off. I think that would absolutely be the best way to manage it. Particularly when it's like things have been miscommunicated, and like I like to say that like a joke, everything about a joke is the context, and so once the context gets lost, it's not even like effective sometimes to explain it, right? Because the context is so critical to understanding how jokes work. And so a lot of jokes, when they escape the context or they escape the environment where they were created, they just lose all meaning. Do you know, I don't know if you guys ever paid attention, but like with Dave Chappelle, when he like stopped doing the show, that was one of the things that he said why he stopped doing the show was that the jokes, you know, it's, I think it's very well known. His partner, longtime partner and writer is white guy, right? Yeah. And that for them, a lot of these jokes were jokes that they thought were funny and were funny within a certain context, with a certain community and a certain group of people that they like hang out with, I guess. And as the show got really popular, they just felt uncomfortable with like how some of the jokes are being interpreted, and the context just starts to get lost when you reach like a wide audience. And so for me, like understanding that that can happen with jokes, I make lots of jokes. That's why I like to be hyper aware of the fact that like they can lose context. I think you're totally correct that like once that happens, it's maybe not even valuable to try to explain it because the context is lost on those people who are like either upset or offended or confused or whatever issue that they're having with it.
Yeah, I mean, I think in a different sense, with anything we produce or communicate, it doesn't matter what it is, whether it's a joke or any other type of communication. Once we put it out in the world, it doesn't belong to us anymore. Right? It's you don't own it. You cannot expect to dictate how people understand and interpret the things that you say. And the masters are the people that manage to maintain the greatest amount of signal, like true fidelity, without allowing any noise to creep in. And to do that while being concise, well, then that's how you end up, with the Lulus of the world.
Yeah. Yeah. Paul, do you have anything to say while you're in your Uber ride?
Yeah. What do you guys think about the censorship?
Censorship?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, the mass turned on this person, right? Like the whole concept of X, or at least when Elon purchased it, is to give people a platform to say these kind of things. But it doesn't look like it's turning out the way he wanted.
Well, in this case, right, thinking about context, I don't know the guy that was fired. I think he's white. I'm not sure. Can't be sure. But I can tell, at least from the founder who fired him, he's a Muslim and he's probably brown. That's what I'm inferring from his profile picture. And so what's more likely? That this guy is actually a racist, or he made an innocent joke, or maybe even intended like just a subtle jab? I don't know. So, let's go by what his actual actions were, how he's handled himself, the fact that he's working with a brown founder, and say, well, the body of evidence suggests that this is a nothing burger and he should have let it blow over. And unfortunately for the founder, what I've seen tweeted, Gregory, I don't know if you've seen this tweet, but somebody made mention of a specific VC on their cap table who took great umbrage to this and probably pressured him into firing this guy. I think that's a mistake. That is disappointing if that's the case, because if you're in advisory capacity to these companies, the first thing should be the mission of the company, right? Like make sure that this company is healthy. And from what I understand of the guy that was fired, he was really talented. So, it just seems like a young founder who's probably going to learn a painful lesson, and hopefully it doesn't hurt their business too badly. But, from what I've seen, some people have called it, $32 million in funding evaporating.
Yeah, there's a lot of details here. I wasn't aware of that one. I did see all the screen captures where the founder just bounced back and forth a million times, like kind of chiming in that he supported the joke.
Yeah.
Then saying that he kind of excusing it like, oh, it's a joke. I can't remember exactly what it was. And they've all been deleted, every single one. So he said, like, first he supported him. Then he was like, oh, I understand how people are upset. Then it's like the guy's fired. Then it's like, not only is the guy fired, but stop being mean to the guy that got fired, right? It went just in every direction. And all of those tweets have been deleted. So obviously, like, he, I guess, regrets, like, just not being able to navigate this well is how I want to be really polite about it. Like, I don't want to cause more harm on anyone, just to be super clear. Like, everyone makes mistakes on all kinds of angles. And I'm deeply full of forgiveness is where I want to come from. And I guess that would even dovetail into, like, I think where you're getting at, Paul, that like I'm against cancel culture at a high level. And I'm not happy to see it like perhaps return the way is my superficial interpretation of what's happened. I don't know all details. I don't know if people on the board pressured people, but that's what I see is like someone does something that I believe was not intended to be taken a certain way. I believe it's a joke. I'm aware of the joke. I understand the context. So I would define it as a joke. People disagree. It's fine. That's my interpretation of it. It was misinterpreted. So jokes get misinterpreted. And I don't think people should be canceled for making jokes that get misinterpreted at the highest level. I am against that. And I think we had a lot of that at one point. And I'm not happy to see it return. So like from like a free speech perspective or whatever, like that's where I stand. I still think that people have personal responsibility and need to like ultimately deal with the consequences of their actions, which stands for both the both people and both parties in this case, right? Like you do need to be careful about what you say and when you make jokes.
This could have played out very differently, where the guy tweets, has the interactions he does with people on Twitter, refuses to apologize, which is principled because he did not intend. His position is that he was not making a racist joke. He was making a joke about hackathons. So he did not apologize for the thing that people thought he did. I'm okay with that. Now, at that point, if the founder had said, hey, I'm making the judgment call that because of the way that you behaved, you have misrepresented our company, you have damaged our brand, I'm firing you full stop, and everybody who has a problem with that, F you. Okay, so be it. That's a position. That has conviction. That is not cowardly. Lean into it, and there you go. And then you stop talking about it, and you move on.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So when I wasn't like a rogue independent operator like I am now, and I worked in a large company, when any kind of incident would happen that was PR related, the rules were like no one says anything.
Exactly.
No one that way, and I ran point on this, right? So we'd have someone come up, someone would say something about us in the press or whatever, and I would be the first to know, and then I would send an email to the executive team, everyone like, turn everything off, like do not say anything. We're going to evaluate this. We're going to have a response that was one that we support and we believe in to prevent that type of issue where you're like, oh, I support this, and then lo and behold, I don't support it. Like you can't have a mixed message like that. You need to be able to go out there and be very clear about what your stance is. That's why I made the Dave meme, which I was like, Dave didn't say like what's the right one. Dave just said like you have to pick a lane, right? Either you're against this and you don't support it and you're 100% against this, or you support it and you think free speech is important and you go to more in the Elon direction, or you take the third option, which I think is where you were coming from, is like just let it all blow over. Like you don't need to have an opinion on everything. Yeah. And I think that corporations and companies and startups don't need to have a strong political view on things. I very much support I would call this the Brian Armstrong kind of Coinbase perspective.
Well, I take it I called it the Huberman, right? Just do a Huberman. Huberman was the subject of a hit piece on investigative reporting. I think, was it The Atlantic? I don't even remember who published it. But whatever was alleged, that he was juggling like a dozen women in a dozen countries and none of them knew each other, and he was such a bad guy. He just pumped out another podcast on like cold plunging or something. He didn't even acknowledge it. Life continued, and there was a furore for half a day, and life went on.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I thought I would use the term like insidious. I was really offended by that like article, that it only just made personal accusations about his relationships with like completely inappropriate. I think to be airing that in a public way and I don't know what the intention of the journalist, I can only assume it was to hurt somebody who is relatively successful and people like, and as far as I know, all the accusations in there were very personal in nature. None of them were like criminal or some kind of serious liability that would make me question the things that he says on his podcast is expertise or something. I was just really, really, really offended by that one. I was appalled. Like, I really think that stuff is just terrible. Like just assassinating someone's character by like a bunch of what I think are rumors, right? Like there was no court case. It was like I was like, this was like, that was wild. And so I agree with you 100% that like when it happens, like just
allegations are printed on the front page and retractions are printed in like size 11. And I can't remember who said this. It might have been Balaji or somebody else who said this, that over the years, his default posture towards journalists had become defensive and mistrustful. And I understand why. And a few years ago, I was being prepped as a witness to testify in a court case. And the parallels between how I was being prepped to be an expert witness and how to handle cross examination are extremely similar to receiving media training. Because if you are speaking with a journalist, assume that their intentions are to get you. And that was reflective of how Huberman was treated, how Sachs has been recently treated, you name it, all types of people across the spectrum. If a journalist is calling, it's usually because they're trying to sandbag them.
Yeah. It's, well, it's unfortunate because I do think journalists do serve an important purpose, and there are like exposés, and there's a number of like famous articles or instances where journalists did expose something really important, right? But I was always supportive of those ones where it's like it's based on facts, it's based on hard evidence, and this goes all the way back to like Upton Sinclair and the jungle and like workers' rights and stuff. Like there is a really important place, but it's unfortunate to see that taken in a very, what I think is a very different direction than the spirit of some of those types of things.
And it's not, I don't want to call things character failures when they're really just incentives. Structurally, I think journalism and the press made a tactical error over a decade ago when they did not immediately paywall their content. This idea that they could give their content away and make a living on clicks, that was a mistake. And somebody I follow intermittently, Scott Galloway, talked about his time on the board of the New York Times, where he tried to negotiate a licensing agreement between multiple media providers and internet companies, and it was shot down. And the New York Times decided to go their own way because they had the most weight. And effectively, it became a race to the bottom. And so now, what are journalists doing? They're competing against AI, and they're competing for clicks. So they're going to do what generates clicks because they're people and they want to put food on the table. And then, unfortunately, a lot of them also have their ideological bent. And whatever their ideological bent is they decide what the conclusion is and then find the facts to support it afterwards.
Yeah, that's an excellent analysis. I've heard the same thing when it comes to comparing them to, let's say, the recording industry. So the recording industry has actually done a really good job, whether you support what they've done or not, but they face similar challenges. And like they got together as an industry and formed a trade association. And I think they've been much more effective at preserving and protecting the copyright aspect of their business. It's not what it was. And there's a lot of discussion about this, but like they still were able to, negotiate with Spotify and Apple, and because they went as a trade group. I think that was like the strategic mistake or challenge, or I don't actually understand exactly why it never happened in publishing. It could have, they just weren't as organized, or they weren't able to do what they did in the recording industry. But I think there's a really good example of an organization and an industry that like all got together and they proved like together we're powerful, and we can kind of fight back and get some ownership over our content, right? We're like journalists, I think, and publications like newspapers and magazines have not been successful at doing that.
I don't know how much credit they get. I think largely Steve Jobs should get a lot of that credit because he's the one that wrangled them all into the room with Jimmy Iovine when he was trying to put together the iTunes and the App Store and that whole paradigm. I think it was Jobs that drove that ship for them. And unfortunately for publishing, he just died before he could do it for them.
So that's so interesting you brought that up, because like he did try. So there was a similar initiative around, this is getting really nerdy. People who are like just clearly dropping off the podcast at this point, like, okay, that's fine. Paul even left. Too early for him. So when the iPad came out, Steve Jobs, that was like the last invention that he released. He tried to do something similar, because I don't know if you remember, but the launch was with like the New Yorker and a lot of famous magazines were all included in it. And he really tried to like do the same thing that he did for the music industry with publishing on the iPad. That's when iAd came out, and they were trying to make the ads like really engaging and really creative. Like, but for whatever reason, it didn't work. Maybe if he had lived longer, he could have pulled it off. I don't know.
Could be.
That's an awesome take. Well, do you want to talk some AI news with us? Or
Yeah.
I guess since I don't know if Paul's gonna be back. Paul is on a business trip to Los Angeles, and I'm glad that he was able to chime in a little bit. But there's so much stuff happening in the AI world. So why don't I start with this? I mean, it's no secret that Anthropic and OpenAI are gearing up for their IPOs next year. You know, and it looks like at least currently the belief is that Anthropic will perhaps beat OpenAI to the IPO gate. Although it seems like that's their strategy. I don't know if they'll do it for sure, but if I was Anthropic, I would try to beat OpenAI to the IPO because I think that'll give them a much better shot at achieving like a great exit for their investors. Have you been paying attention to this? What is your perspective on this?
I saw a chart recently showing companies like Amazon, Uber, Tesla, and OpenAI, and plotted against how much money they burnt before they reached profitability. And the chart was staggering to see how much more money OpenAI has spent than all the other companies combined. And so with that in mind, I'm wondering, how does that business make sense to IPO if at some point, well, ostensibly after IPO, they're going to be expected to produce quarterly results? Or how long will they be forgiven for running a deficit the likes that they're running right now? So I think Anthropic, I don't know how much money they've been spending compared to OpenAI, but if they're in a position to IPO, it's probably because the business is in good shape. And I was very lucky to attend a Claude Code meetup just this last week in Toronto. Shout out to Studio 535 for hosting a great event, and to the Claude Code team for sponsoring it. 70 people in attendance, 400 on the waiting list. There are a lot of demands for this. It was not a hackathon, but it was hackathon-esque. It was a little smelly. Sorry, folks. But what struck me about that is the thoughtfulness and the approach that they are taking to solve some very specific problems. And I think that if anybody is going to win when it comes to agentic software development, my bet right now is Anthropic. They just look like they're way ahead than everybody else.
Yeah, it's a great question. Like, you know, I think I had been saying that I thought OpenAI was like Yahoo, but it might end up being that they're more like Netscape. That's come out recently, and like I almost felt like it shows how young I am or old I am, in the sense that like Yahoo is maybe my generation, and Netscape. I did have Netscape. I do remember it came out, but I was a little bit young to like really be in the mix when they went public and understanding like the business challenges that they faced. But that might ultimately be correct, that they are Netscape in the sense that like they were first very early, and like they went after a paid business model, which is what Netscape did. And then when, you know, Microsoft came out with their own product that was free, it just made it really hard for Netscape to compete, and they pivoted into a bunch of other stuff. Like, in fact, like the more that I talk about this story, the more I'm like, it's basically the OpenAI story. They came out early. They were first. They went with paid. It went really well, actually. They had a great business. They were making a lot of money with the paid products. A bunch of tech giants, incumbents, came out with free versions, and those free versions really hurt the paid business. And now they're pivoting into a whole bunch of other products in exactly the same way that Netscape. I remember Netscape came out with like an email server and all kinds of stuff. So it's very possible that they go the way of Netscape.
So I think the thing that is really interesting about OpenAI right now, and has not getting a lot of talk because there's been a lot of news since this announcement, but their recent partnership with Thrive Holdings. You remember that? Did you see that?
No.
Okay, so Thrive Capital, Thrive Holdings, Josh Kushner's outfit. They, in a couple of weeks, maybe last month or so at the longest, they partnered up in a way where they have merged their entities, or at least units within them, where OpenAI and Thrive are now a single organization. And the idea is that it will be AI first development for the portfolio companies that Thrive owns. And so, from an incentives perspective, if OpenAI were providing professional services to a portco of Thrive Capital,
Uh,
there come a point where they made a recommendation that is objectively true, but misaligned with the incentives of the people involved at Thrive or the Portco. But now that they've become one organization with the researchers and the engineers and the operators, then that barrier of misaligned incentives that are gated by the relationship on one side of the line and the other, that dissolves. And so they have an interesting opportunity to really tackle problems in the verticals that those holding companies operate in from an AI first perspective. And I'm super bullish on that. That is going to really upend a lot, where you're going to see these extremely small and lean Thrive teams and Thrive companies
okay.
outperform much, much bigger companies because they are approaching the entire problem as a AI development problem assisted by OpenAI. That I like.
Okay. Wild. I hadn't heard about that at all.
It got
Okay.
lost in the shuffle. And it got lost in the shuffle because it was memed as a VC circle jerk. I give you 100 billion, you give me 100 billion, our stock pops, blah blah blah, and you could interpret it that way, and that would be practical and pragmatic. But Josh Kushner, I mean, he has done a lot and very under the radar. He's a well respected operator,
Yeah.
and joining those two orgs, I think, is going to pump out some massive wins.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, so there's been a lot of OpenAI news this week. Did you hear about the ad stuff? Let me show this one. I don't know if you were paying attention to this one.
I've seen it pop up in ChatGPT, some shopping stuff. Like they've popped a modal on me, but I haven't really interacted with it.
Yes, this was a big controversy. So these things started to appear in OpenAI at the bottom. They don't say sponsored. They don't say anything. They're just like these call outs. So this one is for like Peloton. This one was for Target. This is another one for Peloton. This was a Spotify one. And so, of course, there was like this massive revolt when someone accused OpenAI of releasing some type of ad product and claiming that these were examples of it. I think this goes back to some of what we were taking earlier about like the PR issues around some of these things and how they've been handled. And so they instantly responded saying that they're not ads. That was their first response, like they're not ads. And they didn't fully explain what they were, but they said that like, oh, there's just some UX challenges we're having with these things being rolled out. And there was like a good explanation. And so if you dive in, the best explanation I can come up with, though it's not exactly confirmed by OpenAI because I don't think they've been communicating as well as they should have on this. These are all examples of like partnerships that they have with people who are doing API integrations. And so the way that these been rolled out in my world, coming from like the advertising side, I would call this a house ad. So when you run ads, just like on ABC, they run a bunch of ads, they advertise their own television shows, right? That's a house ad for their own products, right? So if you're running a bunch of like ads to promote partnerships and internal things you have, they're still technically ads, right? But the pushback was so severe and people were so angry about it that they kind of like hemmed and hawed. And I don't know, the organization's so large too. It's possible that like different teams aren't necessarily communicating as well and they didn't have all the information and stuff. But it's like another really interesting controversy. The other thing I'll say on this is like, it's not a surprise to me that like when ads roll out, because they definitely will roll out, that there will be a huge user backlash. There always is, right? So if I was on the OpenAI PR team, I'd be preparing my narrative and being prepared for a proper rollout of this, essentially, especially based on like what happened here. But I don't know if you looked into this at all or you had any perspective on what's happening.
Well, I've seen it, and then it didn't offend me. I just kind of ignored it and continued using the product. And on the PR front, I don't know. There's stated behavior and there's actual behavior. And if people state that their behavior is that OpenAI starts inserting ads into my $30 a month plan, I'm never going to use it again. Well, I'd wait to see the metrics that show actual churn. And maybe this is a case where, they're feeling some heat and they need to go first and figure out a way to monetize and, start soaking up those costs that they're generating, the burn rate. But the point of a business is to make money. Anytime that you're receiving a free or subsidized product, well, guess what? Then you're the product, and expect your attention to be sold, because now that's what matters. Our attention is the thing that everybody's after.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I mean, like, look, I've been in the ad tech side for a long time, right? And so you hit on both sides of the equation. Users get free content because ads pay for it. It's very obvious that they will roll this out at OpenAI, and I think it's becoming obvious, based what we were just saying earlier about are they the Netscape of our time, that the paid product is probably not going to be the right way for them to monetize going forward.
No.
I think it's quite likely that the free version will become more popular. Maybe they'll keep the paid version, or maybe they'll get rid of it. Like, ad supported will be the way this product works. And I think it's kind of like I don't know if it's a shootout, or they're trying to see who. It's a game of chicken, I think, almost with Google. Like, who will do this first? I think that's where the whole debate comes down to. Like, there's advantages and disadvantages to going first, and I think they're both waiting for each other to pull the trigger. The disadvantage is users get angry and they might flee. The advantage is you'll get significantly more revenue. And I think that on the marketing side, everybody is desperate for this product to come out, because clicks just keep going down, right? You cannot get traffic anymore from Google. SEO is really difficult, but it's even impacting Google ads, like SEM, buying those keywords. People are not seeing the same click-throughs that they used to. So the marketing industry, they're desperate to see this product to roll out. People are going to be happy to give OpenAI and Google, when they come out with it too, money to run ads, right?
It's a no-brainer. I mean, talk about intent signaling. Somebody asking an LLM for a recommendation, being able to be that recommended product or service. What is that worth to you? And for OpenAI, I imagine, and probably any and all of these frontier labs who are interested in commercializing their business in a real way, they got to figure out a way to get to a pay for outcome model, where the models get so good and the reach expands so much farther outside of the browser or the IDE, or however people are interacting with these tools, that you can reliably define a set of outcomes that you want them to deliver. And it's like paying employees to get it done for you. What is the value of that type of service, and who's going to be first to offer?
Yeah. I've seen, so they are running in other, let's call them smaller third-party chatbots and AI platforms out there. And all the results I've seen show that they're brilliant in terms of performance. And I would go as far as say, as consumers like them. That you have a conversation with the brand, you can ask it the questions and solve the problem that you need to solve. And at a high level, I think that's what most advertising is supposed to do, is help you solve a problem, right? And they're very, very good at doing that. There's also people that experiment with brand ads, and it changes the tone and voice of how the LM's speaking. So I think it's going to be really interesting, and I'm excited about this all rolling out. I also think that a free monetization system or model around this rather than paid is probably a better way to experience this. I was paying for all of them at one point, and I started not paying for some of them, these LLMs and stuff. And so I would prefer to not have to pay for them and get full access. And I think that that's what most people would want. Because I would ask my wife, hey, do something with ChatGPT, and she's like, oh, I don't have the paid version. I run out of tokens and blah, blah, blah. So I think if they can go to an ad supported model, I actually think in a lot of ways it's really good for most people.
Well, the other side of this is the energy required to run these server farms. And I know that Sam Altman is invested in nuclear, and there's other people that are trying to get nuclear to the market. How this looks when those small reactors start coming online and the cost of energy comes down significantly, or at least it can be spreadsheeted in a way where the capex is spread out over the next 1,000 years. Some really interesting possibilities.
Yeah, I agree. All right, we're hitting up on the hour, and so we always like to end with a meme of the week. And I have this one that I want to share with you. I don't know if you're aware of this. I'm just gonna actually share the entire account. This Matthias.
Oh, I love his account. This guy's
Have you
great.
seen this account?
Yeah.
Euro founder. This
founder.
thing is off the hook, hilarious. I
Yeah.
love that like a lot of people haven't figured out that this account is satire. Like, that's the best part, is reading some of these things where they're like taking it really seriously. If you haven't checked this out, this account like is from the perspective of like a European-based startup founder, and he's really proud of like his very small and very difficult to achieve success in startups. And it looks like he's got this one pinned. This one did almost 8 million views, about how his daughter started an OnlyFans account, and it was super funny. And it kind of plays it like he kind of ignores that it's like adult content, but he just goes into saying that like she has to file all the correct paperwork and pay all the right taxes, and he's really proud of her.
Light account? This has to be a Charlie Light account.
Dude, I don't know who's behind it. Like, and I've tagged them on multiple times and like sent messages because I thought it was super. I did a whole Dave meme on this too. Yeah, I don't know who's doing it, but dude, this one was great. The best part of this OnlyFans one was like everyone like so there's a Dave one. Everyone thought that like it's like real. Like if you read all these, they're like, do you know what they're all like so offended. Like, do you know what OnlyFans is? And he replies with like, yeah, my daughter says it's kind of like YouTube.
Oh, that's awesome.
And then of course, like I think I had the top reply, false. They don't allow satire in Germany.
You'll get fined. You're not allowed to make jokes in Germany.
That's what all the replies say. Exactly. Oh, all right, dude.
On the subject of Europe and the UK, I was in London recently, and I made a terrible mistake because my domestic American one is gone, and this is a UK based plug, and so I'm living this life of adapters. But on the back here, there's a sticker. There's a company, somebody got paid to test this thing and certify that it was safe for use in an office. This is a real business that got paid to do this. And I was with some colleagues of mine from Australia, and they told me that if a power cable is shipped to them with the wrong connector on it, they can't re-terminate it with the appropriate connector. They have to have a licensed electrician come in, fill out some forms to re-terminate a simple power cable on a piece of equipment. Something that I have done dozens of times, hundreds of thousands of times in my life, re-terminating, doing my own electrical, all kinds of stuff. And nope, in these other countries, there's a certification regime that you have to follow to be able to do simple things like use an adapter like a MacBook.
You don't have those laws in Canada?
No.
Okay. Well, then I'll say this: I've never been more proud to be a North American. Like there's I don't know if it's on the Euro. So the Euro founder thing seems to have spawned a ton of like copycats and I don't even like real content about the insane amount of overregulation in Europe. It's one of the few topics where like I feel really confident to just go full on with this one because I think it's ridiculous. And like what you just described like is bad, but like there's one where the guy talks about like he wants to replace windows in his apartment in somewhere in the UK. It's $5,000 to manage the paperwork and the regulatory filings for like something that's like under £1,000, of course, under £1,000 to actually do. Yeah. 5 times the cost in order to file the paperwork. It's bonkers. It's so obviously bonkers. Like everybody should go online and be ridiculing this stuff because it just shouldn't be. It's ridiculous that stuff is happening anywhere. I had a similar experience actually in California where there was a door that I wanted to change in a home that I owned in Berkeley. And he quoted me the same thing. He's like, oh, to do this under like Berkeley law, it has to meet all these like requirements. and it was going to be like $27,000
That's
to replace a
insane.
door.
Insane. Like, look, building codes are important. We need structures that are safe and durable. But if you are not making any structural changes to a building, if you are just renovating a bathroom, you shouldn't require any permitting for that. That is just value extraction at its most obscene.
It's obscene, right? And like, not only that, the incentive then for the owners is to not repair the buildings. So like, not only does it like seem absurd and Kafka-esque in the sense that like you've got to like manage expensive regulatory processes to do something very minor, but the reality or the impact is that people don't want to do the upkeep on their buildings, and it makes everything less safe. So like the
Yeah.
outcome is the exact opposite of what the intention of like all of the regulation is supposed to do.
Markets, baby. Let markets decide and have some regulations so that we don't devolve into lawlessness. But by and large, markets.
I'm glad that one resonated with you. It was awesome having you today.
My man.
We'll have you back in the future for sure.
Let's do it. And remember, folks, shower every day, wear deodorant, be kind, assume positive intent. And if the Twitter mod comes for you, do not back down.
All right, man. Take care.
Bye, Greg.
Bye-bye.